Basically three parts to tonight. We're going to give you some project introduction and some background on the project, and we're going to do the visual preference survey, and then a lot of questions. And we want to give you guys an opportunity to ask us questions and provide feedback. So we have two sections of questions built into the agenda for tonight. It should go pretty well. I forgot one thing, but see, there's such a small crowd. I wanted to do a little hello. So let's just turn and say hello to the neighbor next to you and introduce yourselves. Anybody who doesn't know each other? I'm Carl. There we go. Don't do husband and wife. That's not fair.
Anticipating seeing someone.
All right. Well, thank you folks for humoring me here a little bit for that. Okay, we're gonna come back together.
All right, guys, bring it back.
Okay, so I've got a couple things that I want to just talk about, kind of our general approach for the night. You'll notice that we're not coming to you with drawings and elevations and site plans and trying to show you a solution. What we're really coming to you is with some general ideas about the project, where we're going with it, where we are. At the end, we'll talk a little bit about where we're going, but we really want to hear from you what your questions and concerns might be, and any ideas that you have. So there really is nothing that we're saying, this is what we're doing. We're not trying to sell it to anybody. Obviously, we have some limits, and we'll talk about that through the project. But like I said, we want to talk about introducing the project and hearing ideas, and to some extent, and you'll see this a little bit later in the program, there's just a lot of moving parts to what we're working on, and they are not going to be settled right now. So there's going to be times when we don't have an answer. We don't know what the answer looks like today. So you got to bear with us as we go through this process. It's our intent to do quite a bit of community outreach over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. And so the answers will become more clear as we move through the process. So I want to just point out for anybody who needs it, some ways that you can follow along and keep in touch with us. So if you go to the Home Trust website, you can do the QR code, and at the very last slide, this stays up, and so you can come back to it, take a picture of it if you want to, so you get a chance to come back to it. But you can follow us through the Home Trust website. There'll be information about the projects and current events. For example, we were talking, hopefully by tomorrow morning, we'll have this PowerPoint up on the website, and you'll be able to go back and look at that. And you can look at when our next meeting dates would be and other events that we're going to be working on. And then in addition to that, by calling the Home Trust phone number that doesn't have a period before the 5, I fixed that in my version, or to email to argyle@hometrust.org. And those will get through to myself as a project manager, and then when Amanda needs to jump into something, she can also jump in. But do feel free to reach out to us whenever you can, okay? And so next is going to be Amanda, who is going to tell you just a little bit about the background on Home Trust. And after Amanda will be Bill and Karen from Environmental Works. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks everybody. So I think most of you know us. We are the San Juan Community Home Trust. We are the only active nonprofit housing developer on San Juan Island. We are the only community land trust on San Juan Island, and we are the only people who are creating permanently affordable housing on San Juan Island. So we're kind of a big deal. And we're getting really ambitious. Our mission has been for the last 20 years to create permanently affordable housing for low and moderate income islanders. We do this to promote the economic diversity and development of the island while supporting a sustainable island community and practicing responsible stewardship of our delicate rural environment. As I mentioned, we've been around for about 20 years now, since 2003. We currently have 49 houses in 4 neighborhoods. All of the houses that we currently have in our portfolio are homeownership units. This is the first time that we will build rentals. Currently, we use the community land trust model. If you don't know much about community land trust, the very short and simple version of it is we separate the ground from the asset that you build, meaning the house. We put a deed restriction on the ground and the house so that you cannot sell it on the open market. And we preserve that affordability over time as it's bought and sold between low and moderate income community members. And we as the nonprofit facilitate those sales. That's a lot of what we do. We know that the community needs rentals. We've known that for a long time. The Home Trust has spent the last, 5 to 8 years, I would say, at least, exploring the possibility of rentals. The reality is it's very, very difficult to create low-income rental opportunities for people. It's very expensive. The maintenance is very expensive. The Home Trust has not, each time they've considered this, they've felt not only are we not ready to take that on yet, but also we want to honor our sort of mission around providing these home ownership opportunities. But we could hear the community that entire time. We could hear the constant sort of tone and need for rental housing. And so we built that readiness over the last few years. And when we saw the Argyle opportunity come up, we took it because the Home Trust is our housing hub on this island. The Home Trust, as I mentioned, is the only active nonprofit in this space that's creating permanent affordability, that is focused specifically on the housing issue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Environmental Works to introduce themselves, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, I'm Bill Singer. I have Karen here from Environmental Works, and a little bit about who we are. We are somewhat unique in the design community. We are also a nonprofit. We've been around for over 50 years. We're a mission-based organization set up to provide high-quality design services to underserved communities. Most of our work is in affordable housing, about 75% of our work. It comes in a variety of sizes, from group homes for folks with physical or behavioral disabilities up to 100 plus units of housing in urban districts. But we have been doing fair amount of work in the San Juans. We did a rental housing project for Opal Community Land Trust on Orcas Island, the April's Grove project. It kind of gave us some experience doing projects on the islands, starting to understand kind of the needs and requirements of your community. And we are very much committed to a design process that involves you and the rest of your community in guiding us. We are a community design center, and we take that very importantly. This is the first step of what's going to be 3, possibly more workshops to really hear what your needs are. And our goal, and we will make it happen, is to design a project that really serves your needs. Yeah, that's who we are. And we're really honored and excited to be part of this project, part of the team.
Thank you, Bill. And yeah, just to reiterate, we are super excited to be starting this journey with you all. And some overall workshop goals for today, our aim is to introduce the overall project, the team, and what the vision is for this project to be, and then gathering your feedback, which is going to be very critical in the next steps as we progress. And we also have a very quick exercise this evening, which you will be able to do with the dots that you have, just to get some of the preferences that you are leaning more towards with some of the images that are posted on these walls. Some ground rules for the workshop is, we're trying to keep it short and simple. We're trying to actively listen and engage, and we're trying to respect the ideas of others. And our aim and our goal is for seeking the community's highest good by doing this. And so with that, we move into a little bit of project introduction, and I'm going to turn things over to Carl and Amanda to talk about the overall intro to the project, some overall vision, and then, yeah.
Great, thank you. So that's a mess, isn't it? This is trying to show you that for this project, there's a lot of different stakeholders and partners that we're going to be working with. We've already started to work with quite a few with the county and the town and getting some of those balls rolling. Obviously, we've pulled in a design team, but these are just a few of the things that we're starting to pull together. And as I mentioned to you earlier, they're not all gelled together just yet, but just giving you a sense of the things that we're going to be looking at. So far, we know a couple things about the project. Obviously, it's going to be permanently affordable rental housing. We're looking at about half of the units being low income and about half of them being moderate income. And then we're looking at the land trust being the overall steward for the project, hopefully over 99 years if we can pull that off. As far as the physical development, we're looking at, it's in the historic district, it's part of our lease and it's part of the zoning for the property. We're looking at the site, and the architects will talk a little bit more about the site and some of its features and constraints. And then, as mentioned before, we're looking for maximum community input on the project as we go forward. A couple of things that are coming down the pipe that are sort of on the way right now. We're currently wrapping up doing the ground lease with the county. We're hoping that goes to council in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what happens. We're working with the town on getting the density up to 42 units, which requires some variance approvals from the town and some other steps that we need to take. We're working with you folks, but also with the town and with others as to what the unit mix needs to be, so we know how many units, as well as what types of units are desired. We're obviously working on funding. Amanda's done a fabulous job of getting some of the first steps started already. And we'll be continuing these enterprises that we're working on. What we've challenged Environmental Works with is on the right, we want it very good and very cheap. But seriously, we are looking at, really creating a project that's quality infill for Friday Harbor, and not just plopping something down on a vacant lot. We're looking at what those streetscapes look like, creating community spaces, and then the quality of design and construction that Friday Harbor deserves. We're obviously looking at context sensitive designs, which is again part of the historic, but it's also just being respectful of the environment and the island character of the property. We're looking at an accessible property. Sustainability is a big element for the Home Trust. They have a very robust program for sustainable development. And then lastly, it needs to be cheap. And then probably the thing that's, that we see that is going to be the most troubling for all of us is just the timelines. With that many partners involved and the number of agreements and documents and reviews and things that need to happen, this is going to take a while. At the end of the program, I'll be showing you a timeline. It's actually somewhat shocking, but we're making every effort to make it move as fast as we can. But I'm just going to tell you ahead of time, we're all going to be disappointed at the timelines. So with that, Amanda's going to talk a little bit about the funding, and I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Yes, and don't get too scared about the timelines. They're so similar to what they've been for the last year, but it's this whole idea that I don't think people realize how long it takes to create affordable housing that is of high quality and does meet the community. It takes longer than people think. You can't just slap it up. And part of that is all those partners, and part of that is the fact that the way that we fund this permanently affordable housing is both by donations and typical construction loans, but also through public funding like grants and resources that are in that realm, and that gets complicated. This project is very different for the Home Trust financially than any project that we have ever done before. Most of our projects, all of our projects to date, again, have been these home ownership. So we get a loan from the bank and we get donations and we build this pot of money and we build the houses and we sell the houses and then we pay off the construction loans and we're done. We move on to the next project. We can't do that here. This is too big. This project's gonna cost $20 million or more. So we're gonna be looking at a different model with long-range financing over a couple of decades that relies on the rents paying off our mortgage that we're gonna carry on all of this. That's one of the reasons why the feasibility of this was so difficult for the Home Trust to get into. So this is gonna be a huge, huge lift for us, and it's important for the community to know that and to understand that when we're talking about that cost effectiveness, that's what we're thinking about. We plan to use several funding mechanisms at the federal, state, and local levels to create this project. I could list out all the grants to you if you're ever curious about that. I'm happy to talk to you about them. There's gonna be a ton. The major resource that we're gonna use is something called a low-income housing tax credit. At least that's our plan. And that will fund a significant portion of this project. Those tax credits are very difficult for an affordable housing developer to get. The process is extremely competitive. I feel like we're well positioned in San Juan County. We haven't had our fair share of those, and I would like to get us our fair share. But they're very competitive and difficult, and they are something to know that that's sort of the elephant in the room of this project, is that if we don't get those tax credits, it's going to significantly change our timelines. The last thing that I wanted to mention is we're raising big money. Our last project, Hollywalk, which many of you in this room supported in a variety of ways, cost a little over, what was our total, Jim? About 4.5 mil?
4.5 with soft costs.
Rough cost, 4.5 mil. We're talking about $20 million here. So for Hollywalk, we raised about $1 million from the community. We're gonna need to raise 4 times that at least. So this is a significant lift for the Home Trust to be able to do this. But we also know that the community investment this project will create is extremely worth our time and our investment in that work.
Alright, thank you, Amanda. So some overall design goals that we are focused on as we start this process is, of course, as Amanda iterated, we're looking at an all affordable housing development. We're looking at like a 40-unit project here. And also this development is geared towards supporting the housing goals of San Juan County and the town of Friday Harbor. We are trying to create a safe haven for people to reside, build community, and really like create a serene sense of place in the way we design this project. We want to further the vision of San Juan County Community Home Trust and add affordable housing to the town of Friday Harbor. We want to bring forth a design inspired by the historical context of Friday Harbor, which is a big goal that we're going to be taking with us through this entire process. And we also want to add ample outdoor space, and as Carl began to mention, like having the project communicate with the surrounding streets and like create a very nice walkable community for the people who are going to be residing, as well as the people who are going to be traversing through the site. So these are like our overall design goals, and some images of the project right now, some views of the site in the top right there. And we're also looking at some images in the bottom of the surrounding buildings that are at the perimeter of the site. This is the site. The site is currently at the intersection of Argyle Avenue and Malcolm Street, right there. It's 1.75 acres in total. We are being driven by a historic overlay because right here is where the site is, and it's part of a residential neighborhood which is also in the historic district. So we are being driven by a lot of design guidelines that we want to input into the design as we progress this process. And just for context, this is where we are. This is the Grange, and then we are like right down Argyle, where the site is. So some project constraints regarding site and land use. Again, program, we're looking at a residential development that is 40 units. The allowed density is 42 units. We're looking at a maximum height of 35 feet. Parking is to be provided in an area that is visually unobtrusive from the street, so you're not going to be looking at a surface parking lot as you're walking through. And then setbacks, we are looking at 20 feet of setbacks in the front of the site facing the street, so that the project begins to match the existing frontage of the surrounding. Yes, ma'am.
The setback off of Argyle, it's required to be 30 feet.
All right.
Yeah, that's the historic guideline, and that's how the land bank was able to justify the purchase originally. And if you look at all the other houses along the
So you
street, they're
match
all
the
set
block
back
face.
30 feet.
Right.
So make sure you take
That into account.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
Yes, sir.
How do you get the 35-foot height allowance?
It is being driven by the town of Friday Harbor's code. So-
Okay, aren't
so
they
the-
at 27 feet, most of their,
It is an incentive for historic
Historic
preservation.
preservation.
thank you.
You're welcome. And then side and rear setbacks, 5 feet minimum from the property line. And then, as I mentioned earlier, because we're in the historic overlay, we have historic design guidelines that we're gonna be looking at, we have a small extract here of what that begins to look like. And so, in this image right here, this is most acceptable, compared to the image on the right that says no. We are trying to match with some of or most of the design articulations that we are seeing around the town of Friday Harbor. So new residential construction should be compatible with what's currently in context. And so during this design process, we're going to be studying all of this articulation and seeing how that can be incorporated into the project. And some of the areas where these parameters begin to apply are scale, massing, roof, setbacks, entry, openings, and building aesthetics. We're going to be studying all this and also the surrounding neighbors of how they are interacting with their street frontage and how the new project is going to be interacting, so that the project seamlessly flows through as part of the community. Some project constraints about the program, a breakdown is we're looking at 40 units, mix of studios, 1 bedrooms and limited 2 bedrooms. We're looking at grade parking, a residential commons with meeting spaces, some laundry space, an exercise room, and there's going to be ample outdoor patios and landscape areas. Shared open space is going to be intertwined with the project so that there's little nooks and corners for people to have and be outside and enjoy community there. And then housing support spaces, staff office, utility and maintenance areas, which are part of a project that's as big as this. And we don't have any commercial use right now that's being looked at.
What is limited 2 bedrooms?
Oh, sorry, limited 2 beds, so we have more ratio of the studios and 1 beds. Limited 2 beds just means that there are gonna be a fewer units. Yes,
What
ma'am.
if someone wants to have a cut hair to supplement their income?
Amanda or Carl?
I think as long as they're within the town's rules for that, they would be okay.
Yeah.
There's certain limits on how much of that you can
Because
do,
it's
so I
pretty
think.
nice when people can supplement their income by doing nails or cutting hair or
They have,
massages.
they have to be able to meet the home occupation rules. If they
Right.
can-
Home
If
occupations
they
are
can meet the home
allowed.
occupation rules, they'll be fine.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That was good.
Great, you did it.
You hit it.
Yes, sir.
I was a little surprised by the, definition for the low income at 30% AMI. 'Cause
Right.
For our ownership housing, we started, it goes from 50 to 80%.
Yeah, this is a little bit deeper dive into affordability, coming down 30%, but you also notice the other end was 115%, so it's a little bit bigger spread.
Moderate, the RIA with is going to 120, so, yeah.
Sir, Elliot?
Yeah, when you go to rent, the units, will people in the lower bracket pay less? Or is it that you just have certain number of apartments earmarked for those people that are in the lower bracket?
We'll let Amanda answer that.
The subsidies will be income-based, so people will pre-qualify for the units, and instead of certain units being moderate income and certain units being low income, those ratios will be based on the families that are living in the buildings and what their income levels are. So basically, if we have a unit available and you're anywhere between that 30 to 115% of AMI, you're gonna qualify for that unit, you're gonna get that unit. The only kind of manipulation that the Home Trust might be doing in that way is to try to keep that half and half where we need to and not let it get too skewed where we have 100% of the units for very low income people and none for moderate, or vice versa, where they're all for moderate or none for low. That's the only time that we might shift that, but they will not be designated by unit, it will be designated by, driven by the family's income. Does that answer your question?
Part of it.
What is the range?
Yeah, so the range is 30%, and I have our director of housing here as well. She can help answer questions specifically about this. Our range is 30% to 115%. 30 to 50% is considered very low income. Our current homeownership model typically doesn't serve that group because they can't qualify for a mortgage, quite frankly. 50 to 80% is considered low, and then 80 to 115% is that moderate. So this breakdown will be half moderate, and then of the second half, it will be split into quarters, about a quarter very low and a quarter low.
So the other part of my question, maybe I just missed it, was does a lower income family pay less per month?
Right, I knew I missed something. So the rents are also sliding scale, and they're based on published rents at the county level. What's the term that they use, Lily? Is it fair market rent? Yeah, so basically, each year, the county publishes new max allowable rent rates for affordable units based on current area median income and family size. So a family of 4 can make a maximum of X, right? And that changes year to year. And so people who are at a 30% of AMI, their max allowable rent is gonna be much lower than the people who are at 115% of AMI, and the Home Trust has to make up that subsidy. which is exactly why we can't let the scale get too far out of balance, because we have to be able to afford the mortgage.
Will this project put all other projects you're working on hold, or?
Nah, no, we're just doing it all at once right
Okay, good.
now.
Have you met Amanda yet? Jim?
Yeah, I noticed in the sheet, you went to 2-bedroom, but I understand there may be some desire for 3-bedroom units.
Yeah, we're,
How are we going to decide how many of which size units we put into this development?
yeah, the concept that we actually did, in response to the request for proposal was fairly heavily steeped in studios and 1-bedrooms with a limited number of 2-bedrooms. Feedback we've gotten since then is really coming from two sources. One is the desires of the county seeking more of 2- and 3-bedroom units. But also speaking of that is the town is finishing their housing needs assessment. It's not actually finished, but hopefully they will. And that will speak to it also. They've basically done a much deeper dive into the market need of the unit mix. So we'll be using the original proposal, the county's thoughts, the town's thoughts, combined with the public's thoughts to come up with the final mix. And we'll actually, just the way that their process works, we're going to be needing to define that mix fairly soon, because it affects our development agreement and it affects our funding for the low-income housing tax credit. So that's probably going to be one of our earlier decisions as to what is the unit mix. Good. Amanda?
And I can share, and these are sort of unofficial statistics that I have learned recently about the housing need on the island that I think will be reflected in the housing needs assessment, but I'm not quoting that. This is just sort of unofficial information. But recently I learned that there's a statistic out there that says that of our home ownership households in our area, somewhere upwards of 90% of them are head of household men. And of our renter households in our area, upwards of 75% of them are head of household women. And so what this tells me about our community is that we're probably gonna see a lot of single moms with kids that need these units, and I think that's what I've heard from Lily, our housing director, as she's been talking with folks, and what I'm sort of hearing here intuitively out in the community. And this creates a really big challenge for the Home Trust knowing this, because I don't know how many of you have been by that site, but it's not huge. You know, getting 40 units in there is gonna be a trick. And so the more 3-bedroom units we have, not only does it take up footprint from the site, it also makes it more difficult for us to make that mortgage. Every one of those bigger units that we add makes it more and more difficult for us because we have less rent capacity every time we do that. So it's gonna be a real dance and a real balancing act of us trying to do our best and meet that community need as much as we can while still making this project work overall.
Let's do Elliot and then next.
No, Barbara, you go first.
Barbara, you go
I'll
first.
go after you.
Okay, I have 6 rental units and I have 6 single women, 1 in each unit. There is a desperate need for people who work in town. Some don't have a car, some are elderly, and no longer drive. So
We're there. Yeah.
we're right in the middle, and I think, you know, some of the women are retired, they know exactly how much money they have, and they're pretty well off. And the other women have very little money, and, you know, my rent is accordingly. But I think there's a, you know, and the ones who are working, all work in town and walk to work.
And that's actually one of the great things about this site is that it's very walkable.
Yes.
I mean, you could live here without a car very easily.
Absolutely.
So, but no, your point's well taken. I think that's where Amanda's anecdotal evidence is. I think that's where we're looking is looking at those demographics and who's gonna occupy these units and therefore what units do they need.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
It,
So then I'll come to you next. I'm gonna get Elliot and
Is
you.
it related to hers?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
Well, I just remember that, that you guys displayed, was it 78% were, of the people that were on your list were single women?
Well, single people. And
Single
we, you know,
people.
so that's our list, but Lily pointed out to me very astutely the other week, you know, she said, Amanda, our list isn't the big list. And we do need to look at the big list, because the people that are getting on our list are people who are ready for a mortgage, or people who are ready for home ownership. You know, that's a different group. It's not the same group necessarily. So we really, our goal is to widen that and also work in partnership with the town around this much wider data set that they're gathering. And know that we need housing units at a large scale. The last number I heard was over 600 units are needed in Friday Harbor alone. So, whether we add 40 studios or 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, it's all gonna be good stuff. We're gonna try to match it as well as we can to the community, but I think we all know that we've got plenty of people that need these units.
Elliot, you want to come back to
Yeah,
that?
I have a funding question, Carl. Hypothetically, let's say I'm a big businessman and in the San Juan Valley, I have a Indy 500 racetrack, 40 employees. And I come up to you and I say, look, my business depends on having people be able to live here, so I want to donate 5 million, but I want you to earmark 10% of those units to my guys. Can you do that?
That's a great question. No, actually, we can't. Now, if you came to the table with 20 million, we could. And I'll explain to you different. I'm not putting a smart aleck here. Here's the difference. When we get into the low-income housing tax credit, it has to be open to all people interested in renting. So even the county who is contributing the property, we can't favor county employees. If your guy came along, the answer is if anybody wants to come along and give us the funding so we don't need the low-income housing tax credit, we could pull that off for you, no problem.
I think Lily's got something to add.
I just have another question. So that 50-50 split between low income and moderate income is not a requirement anywhere. That's just what we are aiming for, and then that can shift as the needs change? Or are we like,
It is required by the county in our lease, and it's required by different funding costs. We're using like the Housing Trust Fund and different resources like that. It can ebb and flow to some degree. If we're at full capacity and the last rental is ready to be rented, and the family that comes up on the wait list and qualifies is one way or the other, we do have some allowance and leeway within that, as long as I said, it's not getting skewed too much in one direction or the other. But 1 or 2 units either way, off of that 50% is not gonna get us into compliance issues. That's just sort of the ebb and flow of people moving in and out of housing, so.
But to be clear, the baseline that you're talking about is in fact required by multiple of our
Yes,
partners.
generally speaking, that is gonna be the requirement we're falling under and aiming for constantly, and explaining why we're deviating from it when we do. Hang on, we have a question back here.
Okay, sorry.
What do you perceive in terms of, for lack of a better return, like in a rental? I'm coming at this with no knowledge. I have no preconceived notion here,
No
but
worries.
would there be opportunity for some seasonal rental if you had stuff available, or is this
Probably
you're
not.
looking for long term?
I think we're gonna be looking to sign year leases,
That's
we
fine.
can really
That's
give
what I
them that
thought.
opportunity.
And in
Yeah.
addition to that, when you do rental, even commercial or residential, doesn't matter, you consider a vacancy factor of when they're gonna be empty from time to time. As Amanda mentioned, there's at least 600 units missing in Friday Harbor right now. So we don't think the vacancy factor is gonna come into play here at all. It will probably never be vacant in our lifetimes.
Because the businesses, I mean, if it's seasonal, the businesses usually take care of that. They provide housing.
Sure, the bigger ones do, yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think for us at the Home Trust, we are open in the future at looking at lots of ways to partner across the community and create lots of types of housing, but our anchor, the people that we're serving, are year-round, full-time resident islanders. That's who we're building this for.
So my question was about that commitment, like what kind of a, time commitment will be required of renters?
Yeah.
So.
That's not 100% worked out yet. I mean, I think we're open-minded based on people's situation. Lily, do you have any, I don't think we've developed the specifics of the rental program to that degree, but I think we don't want to put somebody in a month-to-month lease when they're a single mom and a year lease would really benefit them. And we don't want to, we want to create, again, that sense of place. We want to create that sense of home, security. And I know for me, I live on a month-to-month lease right now. It stresses me out. I mean, my landlord's great, but I'd love a year lease,
What provisions are you making for elderly or handicapped
Yes, that's a really great question. I am gonna intro it and then I'll turn it over. And just wanting to intro it with this blanket that is on everything. As much as we possibly can do, we are going to do. Universal design is a value of the home trust. Accessibility is a value of the home trust. We're always gonna be balancing that with this very necessary cost effectiveness in this. And I'll let you get into the
So
process.
you answered.
Sorry.
No, Amanda gave you the basics. I mean, we have a certain number of units that are required to be accessible or adaptable, which obviously we'll have to do. And we do have some topographic challenges, which you would not believe. It looks like a flat lot, but it's actually a pretty good drop from the street to the property. But it is our goal to make it 100% accessible and adaptable if possible. We may not be able to. So we're gonna give that a try. We're talking with, one potential donor is very interested in aging in place. And it's a deep conversation that we had to try to work that out. If we can, we'll do it. We may not be able to because of physical limitations. I don't know if you guys wanna jump in on that, but it may be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, if, all ground floor units will certainly be will be accessible. We do have, we're probably gonna have some second floor units, so obviously they're gonna have to go up a stair, but we're looking at probably at least half of the units
Thank
being
you.
accessible.
I forgot, no elevators.
Yeah, we are.
There's a distinctive groundwater issue with that property. And if you dig down anywhere on that property, 2 feet down, you will hit water, guaranteed. So drainage, or draining it properly, will have to be addressed, as well as, draining it to the storm,
Sure.
getting it to the stormwater, which means you're gonna have to cross my property.
Yeah, what is the plan for
So-
stormwater mitigation?
and also-
Do you have, is there one in place?
It's a little early right now.
Yeah, we haven't.
We're doing the testing and things that Lynn knows we're doing to find that out.
And Phil, I would think that you could put, if you could get a donor to give you 10,000 pickup trucks full of gravel, you could eliminate a lot of trouble. with that gravel.
Typically, all the ground floor units are gonna be slab on grade, it won't be, crawl space, or certainly no basement, so we won't be, we'll have to
I
dig
know,
down
but it'll
for our
have to be,
footings,
cause
yeah,
the groundwater is,
right.
it's this deep.
Yeah.
And we've gotta deal with that drop that Carl mentioned. So
Right.
those two
I know.
things might start to dance, you know, and we'll see if they do.
So my point is, this is a little bit early for us to come up with a technical solution to that. We are aware of the groundwater, we're aware of the storm drainage situation. I can't give you an exact answer, but we know that we have an answer. Yes, sir.
Have you tested the town at all on how firm their parking requirements are going to be?
Yeah, they're being pretty
firm.
good. They're basically saying one space per unit.
Of course, that's ridiculous.
Are they planning on developing, I'm sorry.
You know, in today's world, for town to go to one space per unit is actually pretty nice. No guest parking, no nothing. It's not bad. I mean, you and I might talk about sustainable living and getting to a different type of world in some years from now. But without asking, they're giving us one space per unit, and that's pretty good.
Oh, okay, one per unit.
Right.
Right.
Are they concerned that if you have less than that, there will be parking impacts on the neighbors? That kind of thing?
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a project here in town that was proposing 19 hotel rooms with no parking, and the council apparently had a meltdown. But you can understand, it's somewhat challenging for planning folks to imagine a residential unit without parking. Interestingly enough, when you talk to young people, a lot of them, like my son's like, I don't want a car, I don't need a car. But we're in one of those transitional times in world history. We're not being asked to put in 2 cars per unit with 0.25 guest parking spaces and all that. Dropping us down to 1 space per unit is a pretty reasonable ask.
Oh, so there's already a little bit of give from the town in.
Absolutely.
It's just the historical, because if they comply with the historical requirements, the town will allow mitigation of parking down to 1 space per unit. If they were out of compliance, like that other horrid thing that was proposed earlier, they would have not been in compliance because it didn't meet the historical guidelines. So the 2 things you guys have going for you, you meet the historical guidelines, you go up a little bit higher, and you could have a little bit mitigation in terms of parking, 50%. You only have to comply with 50% of the parking. So that's a huge plus.
So hang on a second, I got a couple hands going up, so let's do Elliot.
Yeah, Bill, do you think this design will be the type of design and project where it all gets built at once, or will it be built in phases and turned on?
I think because of your funding, we're gonna have to build this all in one phase.
And then behind Bill, did you have a question now?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering about the question, going back to the historical requirements, which had been at a height limit of 27 feet, as I recall, in town, but if it exceeds that at 35 feet, then you have to provide more parking, don't you?
No, the town's height limit is 27 feet.
Right.
And you can get to 35 feet if you do the historical, design work, if you meet the historical code.
Both the height bonus and the
I was
parking.
thinking that the
decrease.
27 was part of the historical.
No, that's the
That's
baseline
the
requirement in town. So 35 is what you get if you do the historical work.
You can actually get 3 stories if you plan it properly.
That's what
But we
Frank
are
King is
not,
doing.
That's
no,
what
not
I'm
doing
doing.
3 story, we're looking at 2-story development, so.
3 stories not gonna fly.
Probably not gonna hit
I
that
just-
height limit anyway.
I just found that interesting about the parking spaces, because I think a lot of families are 2 people with 2 cars working on in other places on the island, so those people will not be eligible. Is that correct?
No, they'd be eligible, they'll have to figure out where their other car's gonna go, if they're gonna come with 2. It's an interesting observation. Historically, in the United States, affordable housing is 1.64 cars per unit. If you wanna know.
Yeah.
And by region.
I'm just
probably
looking at what we're doing.
Probably.
Yeah.
Do you know if the town is planning to widen and develop, better sidewalks in the whole lot of Mountain Street, which would allow more parking?
I don't know about Mountain Street, but the town is planning on us widening and doing curbs, gutters, and sidewalks on Mountain.
But not the length of Mountain Street, have they talked about that?
We will be doing at least the length of this property. If the town's gonna do more, I don't know. But they,
Mountain Street is much wider.
It's 60 foot
That
east
is-
and
It's
then on
huge,
property,
yeah.
it's very,
Yeah.
on that road, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if that don't have cars.
Yeah,
We-
you know,
each
once-
of our street
A lot of
frontages
working
is
people
close
don't
to
have to have
200
cars on the
feet,
side.
and that translates to
That's a lot
about
of
10
travel and
parking
stuff on the side.
spaces. So we potentially have
It is.
20 parking spaces just
Yeah,
on
so-
the street frontage, yeah.
Because they might want that as guest burger.
let's do one conversation if we can. So I wanna dovetail on what you said in the question that was earlier, because one of the questions that I asked the town, what a lot of communities are doing is letting projects count the on-street spaces as parking, which would have allowed us to count those 10 as our parking, and they were like, yeah, no. I tried, but it wasn't happening. Okay, were there other questions?
I
Yes,
just
sir.
needed a clarification. Very early on, there was a 99-year lease and then a reference to council in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
Can you expand on that, just because I didn't catch
Sure.
that?
Yeah, so, the real estate transaction that's taking place, is that the county is leasing the land to the Home Trust for 99 years.
For $99.
For $99, well, $1 a year paid in advance for 99 years.
Okay.
So that's the real estate transaction. So like any other real estate transaction, there are a number of things that we are working out with the county. So obviously, they need to assure their constituents that their investment will come back to them. So they have certain requirements that they want to achieve. So for example, the number of units or the architectural commitments that we've made. So there's a lot of those variables that have had to be worked out. At the same time, we at the Home Trust have a number of things that we want worked out as the tenant in a landlord-tenant arrangement. Which interestingly enough is, because it's a 99-year lease, it's pretty much of a hands-off. It's pretty much the county gets their say at the get-go and then they back out and we have full control of the property. It's taken us a little bit of time to kind of clarify how that actually works in these deals. So kind of where we're at just process-wise, we sort of had a Home Trust county staff put our heads together to figure things out. Then we had county lawyers look at it, we had our lawyers look at it, we put back another version, and we're there, right now, we think everybody's in agreement. So we have one more group of lawyers at the county that's given to this last check sheet, and then it should get scheduled before the county council. Yes, sir?
I understand that the town has not participated in any of these negotiations.
That is correct.
I think Formally, no. I think that there has been some conversation around some options that the town would be open to, but of course, we know the town has their own process and procedure for any development that happens in Friday Harbor. So this whole process has to happen with the county, and then there's a whole other process that has to happen with the town, and we have to make sure, you know, all of these things that we're hopeful about, these density bonuses that we're talking about, these different pieces are not actually approved by the town yet. We need to go through a process to get those things approved by the town. And that will be many, many more, you know, all of these meetings that we'll continue to have will ultimately, as we formulate our idea, grow into a public participation process. Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that and say the town will need to permit the development. So, you know, all of this work with the county really gets us the land lease agreement, it gets that signed. But how the structures look, how many, what parking, all the details related to development need to be approved by the town.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of our hesitation in diving into all of these simultaneously is that without control of the property, we don't necessarily want to invest great sums of money in this. We've already gone to some investment of bringing environmental works on a little early. We're having tonight's meeting a little early. So we're taking that extra step to be proactive in getting this project along. But when we start getting into development agreements, we're talking serious lawyer time and some other things. This studies that Lynn is talking about starts getting to much more serious money. So we want to get the real estate transaction taken care of before we take that investment step.
When the town went looking for somebody to do this project, they sounded like they were offering some upfront funding for infrastructure development.
The county.
Yeah, that was the county, yeah.
Excuse me.
And in the RFQ, they felt that they could contribute for the, what they call edge improvements, which would be the curbs, gutters, and sidewalks along Argyle. It's not as clean as them saying, we'll give you money. They have a process that they go through, it comes from a grant fund. So it's not guaranteed, but it's their intent that would be the way that those edge improvements are funded. And actually, one of the components that we had to put into the lease was that the timelines that we've agreed to develop the property are extended should we not get that money from the county. It automatically extends our timelines. Because then we would have to now go find that money from someplace else. We're going to Elliot and then Lynn.
Bill, is it typical in a new development that the people have to pay for the sidewalks and the curbs, or does sometimes the town just pay for that?
Usually the property developer has to pay for right-of-way improvements.
You can take that.
Almost all.
We're going to do Lynn and I'll come back to you later. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to mention, and I mentioned this to Bill when I came in, because I think it's important to know, because I worked on that project for so many years. There's only 5-foot easement on the Argyle side. So how you're gonna put it, because curb gutter sidewalk takes a minimum of 6. That's why there's never been a curb gutter sidewalk on the east side of Argyle. So that's just something that you guys are gonna have to figure out. Because I prepaid for all my curb gutter sidewalk in a bond when I did my development. But they told me at that time, the town told me that that curb gutter sidewalk, this is on Argyle, not on Malcolm, will never happen because there's not enough easement.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens in a project of this nature, we'll probably end up giving them the right of way that they need.
You probably do what?
Give them the right of way that's needed.
And that's
Yeah,
not
but then that means
uncommon.
I'd have to give them I'd have to give them.
That's between you and them, but
Yeah,
for
I know,
our
but I'm
property,
just saying that
we probably.
it's something, and, you know, which I was always willing to do if they put it in, obviously. But I already paid for mine. to
But if
put
you
it
come
in.
in with 40 units, then you can put it.
Yeah, I know. But I just think it's an important.
Hang on,
It's good to know, yeah.
Well, I have property on Nash Street, and you probably all have seen that beautiful road. It extends past, Warren Howard's property, you know, parallel with the market. Anyway, I was the only homeowner on the street, and that includes, the market, that paid for, sidewalk and a tree and lighting and what have you. And then, Duncan received a $500,000 grant, and that paid for the entire street, so none of the other homeowners had to pay a penny. So that option exists. I mean, that would have to be someone from the town, so you wouldn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, if it can get pulled off, yes, definitely. This happens a lot in development of buildable grading. It's oftentimes just a matter of who gets there on time. A very typical measurement used in municipal governments is, if it's sitting in their capital plan, then I don't have to pay for it. If it's not in their capital plan, I do. That's usually how it works. So.
I think in this case, the intention is that we're gonna pay for it. I do think that the municipalities, both the county and the town, are willing to partner with us on grants to the level that they have capacity to do that. They've expressed,
I would,
you know,
yeah,
It's actually in our
an
lease.
interest in.
I would talk to Duncan if he's reachable, he did a great job, yeah.
It's actually in our lease that they have to help us.
I was curious whether there's any archaeological interest or environmental issues with that site, and how we address that before we get too far along.
Good question. So we were actually talking about that way over. The archaeological is a big fat maybe. You know, that is a previously developed site, so it may or may not have stuff. We'll get an assessment done for the archaeology if we need to do anything further or less than that. And the second one was the environmental, and that also we'll have to do. We've already had some meetings with the town with regard to whether it's a wetland or not. We'll be working on some of those issues with the town. That all comes with the development process between now and probably when we start the construction documents. We'll be able to get all those and get them developed.
I can tell you the work we've been doing on Orpheus is all required of cultural resource survey, and they reach out to the money.
And are those urban?
Well, there needs to, no more urban than here, yeah. I mean, East Sound is less urban, Friday.
So, in the general feel of this neighborhood, will it feel like people are stepping into an enclave or I don't know,
A project?
gated community without
Yeah.
a gate? Will it tie in well with the fabric of the town, and will it feel good for non-residents to walk through it, take a shortcut, that kind of thing? Or is it a dead end?
I'm gonna answer your question, and because that's such a great segue from this question, we're gonna move into the next item on the agenda, okay? So the answer to your question is, it is Bill's goal, Home Trust's goal, to make this not be a project. So for example, I would expect there not to be one consistent paint color. When we were looking at the concept plans, one of the things we did intentionally is we switched out some detailing and some roof forms, and we intentionally gave variety. You know, we're gonna need to be efficient in the use of money, so the floor plans are likely to be quite similar, but we'll make every effort to make them have enough variety to them that you don't feel, and the other thing, and Bill will agree with me, one of the things that developers do is what they call the market elevation. Anybody familiar with the market elevation? So when you're a developer, this is my building, these three sides are stucco, and this is logs and rocks and big windows and nice stuff, right? This is the market elevation. That's the one you put in the real estate mag. We don't work that way, he doesn't work that way, and we don't wanna build that way.
No,
So-
I think our goal is to make this an inviting place and create continuity that's looking into the larger planning of Friday Harbor and the ways that things are expanding out, the way that that historic district is, you know, all the work that Lynn's done on her properties, all the work that happened on Nichols Street. We want to continue that expansion out and make it this walkable area that we all love. I love walking through all of
Even
it.
quickly,
Sure.
we have a horrible example across from the ball fields at the elementary school. That's what I'm to do.
We need to avoid that.
Oh my
So let's do this. This is a really great segue. I'm gonna let Bill come in and Karen come in and talk about the next exercise. And at the end of this exercise, there's another session of questions. So as you're roaming around, you get additional ideas or something comes to mind, we'll take another shot at questions in a little while, okay? So take it away, you guys.
Absolutely. So we have a quick exercise, and as you can see, there are 3 areas set up on the back side, area A, B, and C. And you all have caps with you, with stickers. Does everybody have one?